If you close your eyes for a second and really listen to the world around you, chances are, well, it's probably a bit of a chaotic symphony, right? Notifications, traffic, just the relentless pace of everything.
And we're all looking for an antidote to that noise. That search for quiet, for deep focus is exactly where we're starting today.
It is. We are doing a deep dive into this fascinating tension at the heart of global fusion music.
We're using one specific track as our case study, Dreamcatcher by Bahramji and Maneesh de Moor. It's, about a 7-minute journey of sound?
7 minutes? I mean, that feels like an eternity in our digital age, and you can tell that's absolutely intentional. This is music that's built to be a sanctuary.
It really is. It blends the ancient with the ambient. It feels, profound, rooted, intensely calming.
But that's where the conflict comes in.
Exactly. Here's the central paradox we've distilled from the sources. This music, which is created with the explicit intent of spiritual seeking, of meditation, it's often profoundly misunderstood.
It lands right in the crosshairs of social suspicion. Yeah. So the same intricate melodies that pull one person toward this transcendent piece are just instantly dismissed by someone else. They hear it and just think, oh, that's the background track for some kind of chemical high.
That's the tension. Genuine spiritual transcendence versus a cynical social stereotype.
Okay, let's unpack this. What is it about this sound that's so attractive, so fundamentally irresistible to the seeker, and what specific elements trigger that instant suspicion from the outside?
Let's start with the attraction, the pull.
The call of the mystic, right. When we talk about the appeal of a track like Dreamcatcher, we're really talking about a core human desire, the need for a meditative anchor when everything else is just spinning.
And the composition itself is a masterclass in providing that anchor. The central instrument is absolutely key. Bahramji, he's identified as a Kurdish New Age artist, uses the Persian santur.
Right, the santur. And that's not just any stringed instrument. It has such a distinct sound. It's a hammered dulcimer.
Precisely. Played with these delicate little mallets. So you get this texture that's bright, almost metallic, but at the same time it's so delicate.
It creates this hypnotic, cyclical melody. It sort of shimmers.
It does. It doesn't dominate you. It guides you. It's immediately soothing, like a musical metronome for your own internal rhythm. It just slows you down.
But the genius of the track is in the fusion, right? If it were just the traditional santur, it might sound a little bit like a museum piece.
Right, a little distant. But Maneesh de Moor layers that sound with these slow, deep, ambient electronic beats.
And that's the combination that creates what our sources call a sonic anchor.
It is. Those deep electronic pulses, even though they're very slow, they give you a subtle physical grounding. The whole track is designed as a tool. I mean, it's used in yoga, in deep focus sessions, guided meditation. It's functional music.
Aimed at achieving a flow state.
Exactly. And it's not just sonic engineering, There's a really strong philosophical layer here. The sources emphasize that this music offers a direct line to ancient wisdom. It's not just background noise.
How so?
Well, Bahramji often incorporates traditional Sufi melodies, and he weaves in mystical poetry, usually from Rumi. So when you add that element, you're not just listening to notes anymore.
You're engaging with a whole tradition of seeking the divine.
That's the fusion of worlds in practice.
Okay, let me challenge that for a moment. This kind of music is often marketed under that very broad, sometimes vague, New Age umbrella.
Sure.
So isn't there a risk that, bringing in Rumi or the Sufi tradition is just spiritual window dressing? How do we know the philosophical depth is genuine, not just marketing?
That's a fair question, and the sources address it by focusing on the effect rather than the label. See, unlike a lot of commercial New Age music that's just for passive relaxation, this track uses these structured, repetitive rhythms that come from devotional music.
So the goal is active contemplation.
It's an active, focused effort to get past the superficial. It offers a spiritual depth that listeners feel is authentic, rooted and profound. It's something they feel is missing from the disposable world of modern pop music.
So the psychological result of all these things, the hypnotic santur, the grounding bass, the spiritual poetry, is what the sources are calling the escape into flow.
That's it, exactly. The subtle repetition lets your mind stop chasing all those surface thoughts. You can move into that state of focused calm where stress it really dissolves. It gives you a genuine sanctuary, a slow journey inward just through sound.
It sounds like the perfect solution for modern anxiety, but, and this is the big but, the intent is so clearly about peace and focus. Why does this genre flip so violently into something suspicious?
Right.
Why is ethno-ambient, this global fusion sound, so often just stereotyped as party music?
Okay, yeah. This is where it gets really interesting. Because the suspicion isn't primarily about the beautiful, delicate melody you hear on top.
It's the beat.
It's the beat. It's the underlying beat structure and the cultural associations that an outsider just instantly applies to it.
So what's the structural link that causes all this confusion?
Okay, so think about those low-frequency, deep, driving bass lines that Maneesh de Moor layers in. Even though the overall tempo of Dreamcatcher is radically slow, the style of that rhythmic repetition is structurally related to rhythms you find in other electronic subgenres.
Like what?
Specifically, down-tempo, chill-out, and even psytrance.
So even if the tempo is, say, 60 beats per minute instead of 140, the brain recognizes a familiar sonic fingerprint from dance culture.
That is the key structural conflation. In a club, that deep, repetitive low end is engineered for physical movement, for collective ecstasy.
But here, in a meditative setting, it's for mental focus, internal calm.
But to someone who isn't initiated into that world, the simple existence of that electronic structure just triggers a cultural shortcut.
And those genres are so strongly associated with specific scenes, specific locations.
Precisely. The source material points out they're historically linked to festival and party scenes where, euphoric substances are often present. And that leads to this simple, almost instant label, Ibiza chill.
So the location and sound get linked, not to a spiritual ritual involving Rumi, but to a purely recreational activity.
Yeah, one designed to maximize external pleasure.
It's an information economy shortcut, then. It's just easier to file that inexplicable feeling the music gives you under a simple category, in this case drugs, than to actually engage with the complex, global, philosophical tapestry of the music itself.
And that shortcut gets amplified by the language, too. Bahramji, coming from the Sufi tradition, uses this highly evocative, otherworldly Persian poetry.
Right.
He's talking about mystical encounters, describing the divine as, say, a goddess with a face like the moon, or talking about spiritual awakening and ecstasy.
And if you're not attuned to mystical poetry, or if you're just looking at the world through a strictly materialist lens, you're probably going to interpret that otherworldly language literally.
You're not hearing a metaphor for union with the divine. You're hearing the description of a hallucination.
The spiritual pursuit gets relabeled as just altered consciousness.
It's a failure of metaphor. Where the pursuit of God becomes synonymous with the pursuit of a drug-induced vision. The very idea of experiencing that kind of intense, non-traditional euphoria without a chemical catalyst, it just seems suspicious to a lot of people.
And we are, as a society, culturally conditioned to find suspicion in things that require patience. Let's go back to that 7-minute song length. It's designed for a patient, contemplative listener. It creates that slow, gradual journey we talked about.
But to the uninitiated, to the critic, that long track length is one of the biggest red flags.
Why?
Because it suggests an attempt to drag out or amplify a state of mind that they think can't be achieved naturally or quickly. In a world of 3-minute pop songs and 5-second videos, patience itself becomes suspect.
So, okay, we've identified the spiritual yearning as the attraction, and this cultural discomfort with slowness and non-traditional euphoria as the suspicion. Now let's try to build a bridge between those two perspectives.
This is crucial because we have to synthesize these two views. The music itself, this whole ethno-ambient genre, it provides an essential service that modern society desperately needs, even if it misunderstands it.
An oral counterbalance.
Exactly, a counterbalance to the relentless pace of modern life.
The person hitting play on this track has a pure intent. They're looking for deep focus, self-care, meditation, maybe just a moment of peace. They want to be transported.
And the composition allows that. It facilitates that transportation through patience. But the suspicion comes from a cultural discomfort with anything that defies easy classification.
Especially intense experiences that require time and internal effort, not just external stimulation.
Right. So the critic's shortcut, just labeling it Ibiza chill, is a way to contain the experience. It makes it less threatening.
If you call it party music, you don't have to grapple with the Rumi poetry underneath or the centuries-old tradition of the Santoor.
You don't. Exactly. It's a defense mechanism against complexity. The real magic of a track like Dreamcatcher isn't just what instruments are used, but where the sound takes you, emotionally and temporally.
And if we connect that to the bigger picture, The source material argues that this music is really challenging modern society's obsession with speed, with immediate measurable results.
Think about it this way. Our society runs on a clock where everything is optimized for efficiency. Communication, consumption, everything.
And this music demands the opposite.
It demands deceleration. It demands that you sit with a 7-minute track and let that flow state slowly develop.
That requirement for patience, that rejection of acceleration, that is fundamentally countercultural today. It implies that the journey is more important than the destination, or at least how long it takes to get there.
And that's why the suspicion persists. We view, say, an immediate chemical euphoria as understandable because it fits a simple cause and effect model.
Right.
But a spiritual euphoria, one that's achieved through repetitive effort and patience, is much harder to quantify. So it's easier to just dismiss it or say it must be the result of something else. The music, in a way, is forcing a kind of spiritual reckoning with time itself.
So this whole deep dive really shows us how profoundly cultural context dictates everything. It dictates whether transcendence is seen as a profound, rooted pursuit or just a suspicious activity that needs a convenient label.
And it all depends on your willingness to slow down, to engage with the complexity.
Absolutely. Knowledge is most valuable when it's understood and applied. So when you listen to a piece of music designed for the kind of depth like Dreamcatcher, what stands out to you about this cultural conflict? Do you feel yourself gravitating toward the sanctuary, or do you feel that impulse for the shortcut?
So what does this all mean?
I think it means the search for transcendence is a profoundly human endeavor. It spans all cultures, all of history. This music, the global fusion of an ancient centaur and an ambient beat, it just offers one of the most compelling modern paths for that pursuit.
And that profound cultural conflict leads us right to our final thought. This music demands patience, introspection, and time. So in a society that practically equates speed with morality, that sees efficiency as an inherent good, why is the slow, deep focus required by a 7-minute contemplative track the very thing that triggers the most intense reflexive skepticism?
It's true. Non-traditional peace is actually harder for our society to categorize than chemically induced joy.
Ponder that the next time you intentionally decide to slow down.